Great news. Dirty Keto is now on Amazon. If you're living in the U.S., go straight to Amazon and get Dirty Keto. Watch it, rate it, and review it. If you're outside of the U.S., meaning Western Europe or Canada or Mexico, it's not there yet. Don't ask me why. Listen, those people made me put a PG-13 rating on it when there was nothing in it that would have caused that. But let's get ahead of this thing. Let's watch it, rate it, and review it. Go get Dirty Keto right now, and on with the show.
Thanks for listening to Vinnie Tortorich on NSNG Lifestyle Audio. Welcome to Fitness Confidential One-on-One. Vinnie Tortorich, founder of NSNG, goes long form with top luminaries in the field of health and fitness.
Vinnie Torres, folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft-sucking at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you'll be lean and mean, guaranteed. Yeah, slow ride. Take it easy. Everything reminds me of a song, and this guy reminds me of a lot of songs because everyone wants to think of him as just being the guy that brought Zone 2 to the billions. I might be exaggerating. Let's call it millions, hundreds of millions. Everyone loves Phil Maffetone. He's on the show here today. And why would I play Foghat? Why would I play Slow Ride? Because that's what we're talking about when Phil is on the show. How to get faster by literally slowing down. Without any further ado, folks, he's been on before, and he will be on again after this show, the wonderful Mr. Phil Maffetone. Yeah.
Thanks, Vinnie. Great to see you again. It's always great to see you.
Same here, Phil. And, we were talking about this off the air. We did 15 minutes that the audience, we could never recapture what we just talked about, right? It's like we always do a show before the show.
Yeah, that's where the interesting stuff is. And some of it's, you'd have to beep out, although maybe you don't do that stuff. But it's always great. You launch, you especially somebody and somebody who's relaxed and cool like you, and you get some of these people that I want to ask them why don't they wear a suit and tie?
Yeah, and you certainly never wear suits and ties. As a matter of fact, that's a pretty cool shirt you have on. What do you have on there? What am I looking at?
Oh, this is my Japanese sake shirt.
Yeah, I see there's a bunch of bottles on that. It makes me want to go have a morning drink.
Sake. I got those.
So, Phil, everyone likes to, paint you into their own corner. And, when people often call other people Renaissance man and this and that and the whole thing, I think you're the true embodiment of a Renaissance man. We all know you because you're somewhat of the godfather of Zone 2, right? You brought it to the masses better than anyone else. You came up with your math method. We all know what you did with Mark Allen, probably one of the most prominent, probably the most prominent aerobic athlete of our time. Wouldn't you say? I mean.
Yeah, without a doubt. And some of the things he's known for are well documented, but it's the things that people don't realize what he did. For those years, he was competing how many races in a row and big races. He didn't jump into little events, 20 in a row worldwide over the course of a, period of years. Just, phenomenal athlete, but dedicated, very, discipline, and the word discipline can't be overused with Mark, because that's one of the main reasons he was so successful, because he had the discipline to do what was needed for his body. He didn't just, I never wrote menus. I never wrote workout schedules. I talked to athletes. I said, here's, you need to do more of this and try that and see how this feels. And he did it all. And he moved forward by intelligence, really.
So most of the audience, they're going, Mark Allen, who are they talking about? Well, I'll give you one statistic that you could probably hang on to. Not Sports Illustrated, ESPN called him the greatest aerobic athlete of all time. And I would tend to agree with that. He was a triathlete, and most triathlon careers at that top rung, right, when you're doing the Ironman in Hawaii, the World Championship, most of those guys are there for 3-4 years. Like if you see a dynasty of the same guy coming through, you think of Lance Armstrong winning 7 tours, right? That's a dynasty that went, before him, the most anyone won in tours were 5. You just can't stay at that level. You can't stay at the show that long. Your brain just wears out. You can't keep doing it. Your body can't keep doing it. You towards the end, you're writing checks your body can't cash. And these guys are doing it by rote. Okay, so I said all that to say this, and I want you to jump in right after I say this. And I may be wrong about some of these numbers. Mark Allen finished second in the Hawaiian Ironman, the World Championship. He finished second like 6 times in a row. Is that correct, Phil?
I don't recall. I remember him finishing second the 2 years before his first win when I was there. So I was up front and personal with what was going on. And one was because of a mechanical problem on the bike, and I forget the other. But both of those he could have won.
Right.
And he could have won another 1 or 2 at the end of his career, and he decided. But
I just want to talk. What I want to talk about is he was there for 6 years before you came along. Most careers would be over at that point. Is the point I want to make? You just can't stay at the party that long in that sport. But Mark had been there. And my memory is usually pretty correct. I want to say 6 times. You were there for the last 2. One was mechanical error. And he kept losing to the same guy. But then he came back and he won 6 in a row.
Yep.
And then took a year off, right? And won an unprecedented 7th. So now we're talking about.
He won 5 in a row and then came back and won 6.
Okay, all right. So.
And by that point in the sport, there were all these hot shot cyclists and hot shot runners. I mean, people who were the best in their individual sport, thinking, I'm going to just jump into this and do really well. And they did. But Mark was good in everything and had the endurance to back it up.
But think about that. 12 years. He was able to hang on when the Lance Armstrongs of the world can't do it. Eddie Merckx, you go down the list of the great aerobic athletes. This guy just kept coming back and winning against better and better and younger competition.
Yeah.
One thing changed when you took it. So take me from there, from when you started watching Mark, figuring out what he was doing wrong and how you changed it. Let's start right there.
Well, it was what I did with every athlete I worked with. I evaluated them. I said, here are your strengths, here are your weaknesses, here are your goals. And most importantly, what we want to do is balance being healthy and being fit. We don't want to sacrifice our health for more fitness. That's the problem that so many people have. And he understood that, and he was willing to do things the right way. And so the first, we talked about diet and we talked about heart rate. And back then the heart monitors hadn't come out yet. I had these archaic cardiac monitors they used in hospitals. And I remember we were running around the track together at University of California in San Diego on the track. And I had set up the heart monitor and I said, okay, here's where I think you should be running. Let's run around the track. Let's see how fast you're going to go at this heart rate. And it was, an 8:30 pace or something.
Wow. And
I said, how different is that than you normally train? He said, I normally train at 6:30 pace because that's what the other guys do. The people that are beating me. I said, well, you're going to start at 8:30 and you'll get faster and faster and faster. And that is indeed what happened. He got faster and faster over the years. Clicked a 5:20 mile at the same heart rate at some point a few years later. And that's how it works. That's why training slow to race fast works, because you get faster at the same heart rate, which means you're highly efficient.
Yeah.
And you don't beat yourself up.
I find when I'm trying to work with athletes that the biggest problem, and I want to hear from you, the biggest problem I have is you can't convince them to do it, right? You have trouble convincing them to slow down. How did you convince Mark, one of the best athletes in the world, hey, you need to slow down to go faster?
Well, according to Mark, he was in bad shape. He was physically. He was injured a lot. He just couldn't win enough. He couldn't win the big one. He couldn't not be injured. And so he was ready to try anything. And that's what a lot of athletes say to me when they come to see me. I'm willing to try anything. And if all of a sudden, I'm able to correct their injuries and then now they're feeling better and they're training slow and they say, oh, gee, I could train much faster, I would dismiss them. I don't want to work with somebody who's not willing to follow the plan. We have a plan. We worked on this plan together. And if you're changing midstream, it's not going to work. I'm not going to have fun and I don't want to do it. So Mark, that's where the discipline comes in. The discipline came in because he was willing to go out at an 8:30 pace. And as he said, how could I run this slow? People are going to see me. I said, well, we'll run at night.
Yes.
So it just, and as soon as he started on the track running 8:15, 8 minutes, same heart rate, 7:45, now 2-3 months later, he's saying, wow, if I can keep this up, I'll be running 6:30 pace at a low, easy aerobic heart rate compared to my 6:30 pace at high intensity anaerobic, which I was doing before. And so it basically, when an athlete balances their health and fitness and they make progress, they feel the difference.
Yeah. Look, I was able to do it with myself in the early 2000s where I was like, what do I have to lose type of thing, right? And I felt like when I was coming off of all the mountain biking where you're always banging around, you're always, no matter what, when you're in a mountain bike, you're always going up a mountain. So being in zone 2 is it's impossible when you're trying to train. And I had to do a thing where I just put a spinner in front of the television in my house and said, okay, there's no mountain here, right? I can do these long base rides. And as long as there's movies on, I can just keep going, right? I can just keep my mind busy while I'm doing this menial task. And when I saw the outcomes, it was just astronomical. You're now doing things in the mountains at a lower heart rate and you're moving faster up the mountain. And when you try to explain it to anyone, it doesn't make any sense. And that's when I came on to Zone 2. And then when I saw your book, I went, okay, this guy's saying exactly what I figured out from other people. So that was a good thing. here's where a disconnect comes in. And again, Phil, please explain this as if you're talking to people in kindergarten, because when we get too technical, the audience just goes, I don't know what he's talking about anymore. So now we have something, people go, what about VO2 max, right? Can you increase your VO2 max by doing zone 2? And you may have feelings about it. I think the VO2 max goes up to a certain amount because you're still building mitochondria. You're still getting there with the mitochondria. But I always tell people, look, after you do 20, 21, 22 weeks of zone 2, if you want to start working a few intervals in once a week, it doesn't have to be twice and 3 times a week, and thinking you're going to a HIIT workout class every day to get there, you're going to get back to breaking your body down again and never building up. But I've found that by adding, after a big giant base, just adding some intervals for just a few minutes in the middle of a workout actually moves that VO2 max in a positive direction. What say you?
Well, I think the key in what you're saying is after you build that base. So I'm not opposed to anaerobic training. I'm not opposed to intervals. I've done them myself. I've gotten people to do them on the track. If they enjoy that, if they don't enjoy being on the track, then they do it on the road. The key is to build a good aerobic base, and now you've got this foundation of fitness, and then you can add the hard training on top. And with regard to VO2 max, who cares? What is the VO2 max? Is the guy with the highest VO2 max the winner of the marathon? No,
generally not. Right, generally not.
So we have this bandwagon thing, especially in America, where people jump on the latest trendy thing, and VO2 max has been a trend that has come and gone since I was a student, and trust me, that was a long time ago. So we have VO2 max, and when somebody asks me that question, I say, well, when was the last time you checked your VO2 max in a lab properly? And most of the time they say, well, I never did. So why are you even asking the question?
Yeah, and it's got to be done.
You're going to check your VO2 max and you're going to do some training, you have to recheck your VO2 max, and then you have to recheck it again. And most people are not willing to do that and don't do that.
I had a guy on a couple of weeks ago talking about VO2 max, great guy on the show. And he was saying, some of these kids today that are not athletes, they're finding VO2 maxes in the teens, which that's probably not a good thing because that's when you're supposed to be your healthiest, Yeah,
the VO2 max is a general measure, and it'd be great if everybody can have their VO2 max measured, but they can't and they won't, and there's plenty of other things to measure to show people that they're not healthy.
Look, what Phil is talking about here, if you ever saw like a Gatorade commercial where they should have got on a treadmill and he's all hooked up and they have a thing on his face and they're talking about, you need our electrolyte from Gatorade and the whole thing. VO2 max is you're measuring gases in and gases out. And you can't do it on a track. You got to be in a lab to do it, basically.
You do. And now that you mentioned the gas, and I'm talking about oxygen and carbon dioxide, those two gases are much more important in a different way. If we make a ratio, if we divide the amount of oxygen into the amount of carbon dioxide, so the amount of oxygen you take in compared to the amount of carbon dioxide you take out, we get something called the respiratory quotient.
Right.
And the respiratory quotient tells us how much fat and how much sugar you're burning for energy. And people who burn more fat than sugar are better endurance athletes, period.
Yeah. And
simple as that.
No, it is. And if you think, this is some old guy talking about old stuff, because that's what it seems like when you get people like me and Phil on, another old guy, Dr. Tim Noakes, just was able, we had him on a show maybe less than a year ago, did an experiment recently, very recently, within the last year and a half, where he was able to take well-trained aerobic athletes to 85% of their aerobic max and still stay, keep them as fat burners. And they were able to do that in the lab, which proves that, Phil, you and I, the old school guys, was like, as long as you stay below 80%, you're good. 79%, you can just burn fat all day. And I've proven that over and over on mountain climbs, on bicycles and everywhere else.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that Tim Noakes went to almost 90%. He went to I don't know if it was 84 or 86%. Did you see that study at all? And can you comment on it?
I've seen it, and I've done those things. I had Mike Pigg one time burning more fat at that level, 88% or something like that. But even at 100%, if you're trained in such a way that your fat burning is really high, you can go on the track and do 200-meter intervals with a short rest for 45 minutes and still burn a lot of fat. You're not going to be burning mostly fat, but you're going to burn a lot of fat. And if you don't have a good aerobic system, that will never happen. And by the way, I'm just waiting to hear back from this guy I know who competed in the World Championships over in Europe, which is just ending now. He's in several events. I know he won the 1500 with a really heavy-duty sprint at the end. The guy is 80 years old.
Wow.
Speaking of old farts. And he's going to come home with a bunch of, he's English, he's going to get back home with a bunch of medals. And most of his training is aerobic base building development. He's been following MAF for quite a while. So this is not just for endurance who are desperate to try something new. They got nothing to lose. It's not just for aerobic athletes. It's not just for athletes. It's for everybody. Humans have an incredible aerobic system that needs to be built up because that's where our health comes from.
Yeah, you just mentioned in passing Mike Pigg and going to 88%. What people need to realize, Mike Pigg is just a superior aerobic athlete. He's not your normal run-of-the-mill guy, and he's able to get that high. That's pretty amazing. But yeah, I'm glad we're still on the same page with this because I want to switch gears just a little bit. You keep talking about burning fat at a high rate, and about 10 minutes ago you said something about if the diet is correct along with the training. What do you propose as being a good diet? What does it look like to you?
The diet dictates your metabolism. The diet sets our metabolism so that, and when people are really misled about this issue. People say I want to lose weight, or I want to compete, and I'm gonna need to burn a certain number of calories. And I always say, calories of what? And as soon as you ask that question, the conversation ends. They often walk away because now you've confused them and they think you're a wacko.
Right.
Well, we burn calories of fat and we burn calories of sugar, and it's the mix, like a really great race car, the mix of fuels that gives us the edge. And it's the diet that determines how well we can burn fat. And if our diet is higher in carbohydrates, we burn less fat. And the older we get, the less carbohydrates we should be eating because we become more insulin resistant as we get older. And therefore, a small amount of carbohydrates when we're 50, 60, and 70, and 80 and 90 are too much quite often because it inhibits fat burning. So if you have too much body fat, you want to burn more fat from an energy standpoint to get rid of the excess body fat. If you're an endurance athlete, and you want fuel to get you through the workouts, to get you through the race without fatigue, with less fatigue, you want to burn more fat. If you're a human and you want to be healthy, you want to burn more fat. People who burn more fat are healthier than people who don't. Very simple.
Yeah. Again, we're on the same page, and I use myself as an experiment. And in one experiment, I'm turning 62 in a couple of weeks, and my idea is, I've been hearing from the time I was in my 20s, sarcopenia takes over, and somewhere between your 35th birthday and the time you hit 80, you can lose half of your body weight in muscle mass and bone and soft tissue loss. And I've been fighting against that. Now, every doctor will tell you you can't beat sarcopenia, and they're correct. I mean, we can look at the late great Jack LaLanne, right? He was diminished towards the end, but he was still doing some pretty great things into his 90s. His wife Elaine, who's still around, who picked up that torch, is still riding skateboards. At least last year, she was still riding skateboards at 90 years old. Right, so there's proof that you can keep this party going for a long time, and I keep finding new ways.
Can I interject something?
Sure,
here? Because
absolutely.
I think I know where you're going somewhere else.
Please.
But the muscle mass is one thing. Muscle mass does not dictate strength. Strength is separate.
Explain that.
We can all. I mean, I've got some big muscles here, right?
You do, yes.
Yet I'm stronger than most 40-year-olds. How does that happen? How can a lean Olympic weightlifter or a martial arts person be so good when they don't have big muscle mass? It all has to do, the strength, it has to do with how many muscle fibers, how many muscle cells you contract with each lift or with each movement. Not muscle bulk. In fact, the weakest athletes in all the sports are the bodybuilders.
Thank you. Finally, someone agrees with. That's why I fucking love you. If I was gay and you were gay, we would be a great couple. Yeah. Listen, I'm saying this all the time. The worst athletes on the planet are the ones you think are the strongest guys, which are bodybuilders. Right?
Yeah.
Most of them are an inch away from death.
It's called Get Strong. And it's so easy to maintain both bone strength and muscle strength at the same time. And all we have to do is lift up a weight that's moderately heavy and carry it over there and put it down, and do that a few times a day. You don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to have special equipment. You just have to lift that thing while you're hanging out in your home or in your office or both. And that will increase bone and muscle strength at all ages.
Yeah. The first time I noticed this, I was 16 or 17 years old on a construction site working in the summer. And I was bowed up back then. I was a good football player. I ended up playing D1 college ball. Right after that, I was probably at the time, 17. I was probably a 150-pound bench presser, and I was able to squat everything in the gym and do deadlifts and all these movements. Right now, I'm on a construction site, and there was a 55-gallon drum. And the guy tells me it's full of oil or whatever. He goes, "Hey, we need you to move that. We need to get this thing through here. Can you go over and move that?" And they looked at me as a strapping guy. They figured I can move it. I went over and I didn't know what to do with the barrel. And you're on the construction site, so now you got dudes laughing at you, and I'm fucking turning red in the face, right? And I'm trying to tilt this thing on its edge and trying to roll it. And it's like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to tilt it too much. It's going to knock me over. And then this little stringy, skinny guy comes up, and almost it looks like he did it with his little finger. He got it. He tipped it on the side. He started rolling it. And I looked at it and I went, wait, that little skinny fuck is way stronger than me. How's he doing that? And then I started noticing other things on the construction site where I had to really struggle to move this pallet or that pallet. And these other guys were doing it by rote, right? They were just making this happen. And that's exactly what you're talking about here. You know, functional strength versus, and that's when I went back in the gym and started thinking, wait, I'm never going to do a barbell curl again, because a barbell curl has made my biceps really big. And now I feel stupid on a construction site.
Yeah. Going through all the muscle, you got to do this muscle, and then you got to do that muscle. And that, you know, that's a bunch of hype. You know, they're selling you something. No offense to the gyms and the trainers out there, but building muscle strength, full body muscle strength, you squat down, you pick up something heavy, you walk over there, you put it down again. Nothing will make you stronger, bones and muscles, full body, than doing just that. Yeah. And you do it enough times a day, enough times a week, you'll get stronger than everyone in your age group.
Yeah. So, look, one of the things I did was I was going, because I still go to the gym. Folks, don't stop going to the gym if that's all you do, because sitting is the new smoking. So we're not telling you to stop going to the gym. We're just saying that do things for yourself. I live in this house in Virginia now, and one day I was leaving to go to the gym to get on a treadmill because I felt like doing a treadmill that day. I don't have one in my own gym. And I walked by the guy cutting my grass. And I'm driving to the gym and thinking, well, hang on, Vinny. You're paying a guy to cut your lawn, and you're paying another guy to go use his device to walk indoors. There's something wrong with this picture. So before I got to the gym, I turned my car around. I came back home. Kid's name is Harley. And I said, Harley, here's the deal. Finish cutting my grass today. You're still hired to do other things. We have weeding. You have a truck. You can move debris and do all this stuff. I'm not firing you. I'm just firing you from cutting my grass after today. And he said, well, Vinny, you don't have a lawnmower. And I said, I don't have one today, but I'll have one by the time my grass grows again. Right? So after I went to the gym that day, I went out to the lawn care place and said, give me what I need. I need to cut my own grass. And that became the beginning, Phil, of me doing other things around the house. Around the time I decided as a New Year's resolution to build a wooden kayak. I got with one of the best kayak builders in the world, right? This guy, Joey Schott, that owns Turning Point Boat Works. He taught me how to work with wood, right? We built a kayak. It took 320 hours to build a cedar strip kayak. But guess what? Every time something breaks in the house that's wood oriented now, I now have that brain working. I'm not calling a guy, right?
Yeah, this is the thing. People don't, we in our society, we source out everything. So now we don't have to do anything except sit on the couch and watch TV. And that's in part how I got strong. I've always lifted rocks in the garden. I've always built gardens and stone walls and cut trees down and lifted logs. And I mean, that's just part of my lifestyle, and it always has been. And I've talked about that, written about that for athletes. One of my recommendations to Mike Pigg, since his name came up, was to go home and chop wood. Yeah. The season's over. Now what am I going to do? Build base again? Nope. Go home and chop wood for the next month.
Chopping wood is one of there are three activities, and folks, this is going to sound crazy and simple. There are three activities that you will feel muscles you forgot you had. Chopping wood is one. Now, my wood already comes cut, right? Like it's cut, and for the most part, but I have a small stove in my office, so the wood needs to be smaller. So I literally go through the process of chopping wood, right? For at least we have 3 fireplaces. We use all 3. 2 of them we chop wood for into smaller pieces. You do an hour of that, that's worth 3 workouts. You're going to wake up the next day and feel parts of your body you did not know existed. Another one is raking, right? We all like to use the blower. I have a blower too because we have a lot of leaves. I got to blow tons of leaves. You start working with a rake, and you will feel and you go, come on, Vin, raking? Yes, we used to do this activity called raking. You're working muscles in a shovel. When you're working a shovel, you will wake up the next day because you're using muscles on one side of your body and the other side is stabilizing, and everyone cares about core strength. This is where core strength comes from. Phil, thoughts?
Full body strength. Core is one of those bandwagons that people want to jump on. Oh, you got to do core. It's like cardio. You got to do cardio. What do you mean by cardio? Cardio. What do you mean core? Core. Most people who do core don't do their whole core. What about the pelvic floor muscles? Probably the weakest muscles that people have, and they ignore it because they're doing the, from the belly button up. And they don't contract the very low abdominal muscles that wrap around the pelvic floor and get that working so that, when we're older, we're not having pelvic problems. Core is, you can't do the core because it's cool, because you're doing what you're doing with your biceps. You don't want to do that. You want to do everything.
Right.
And that means you go pick something heavy up and walk somewhere and squat down, put it back on the floor. And now you've done your core and everything else. Everything gets stronger. If you want to know if you're really strong, get an ergometer. These are the grip tests.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how many pounds or kilograms you're able to grip. That reflects full body strength. It also reflects morbidity and mortality. It's a great test. A lot of gyms have them. They're only, they're under $100 now to get a good one. Worth having, because if your grip strength is not getting better, whatever it is you're doing, or it's getting worse, something's wrong.
Yeah, isn't grip strength directly correlated to all-cause mortality? And I've never understood how that works, but it's been explained to me by several doctors. Can you give an explanation to it, since we're talking about grip strength?
Because it's related to muscle and bone strength. And as soon as you start strengthening muscles, you improve circulation. And as soon as you improve circulation, all kinds of things get better, including the immune system, including the brain, and anything else that's innervated by circulation. So it's a simple, and that's been well documented for I think I first read about those studies when I was a student. So it's been documented for many, many years.
Yeah.
And it's one of those tests that, people say, oh, that's so simple. But I can do a grip thing, exercise my grip thing, and that'll make me better. No, it won't. Full body strength is reflected in your grip.
Well, when you think about it, whenever you're lifting anything heavy, you're also using your hands to lift, right?
Yep.
So you're making that stronger. I learned, and everyone's nauseated about me talking about this, but during the pandemic, early on, I had a Concept 2 delivered to my house because all the gyms were closed. And I was somewhat familiar with doing rowing at the gym, right? Because I would mess around with it as something to play with to warm up for years and years and years. But now I have this thing in my house. So I started watching videos from Concept 2 and watching experts talk about how to do this correctly, because I didn't want to be another jack-off doing it all backwards, right? So I got pretty good at doing the rowing machine. And, 1 million meters became 2 million, became 3 million. So by the time the pandemic was over with, I was at 5 million meters. And I went, okay. I always call indoor exercise masturbation because it's not the real thing. It's a simulation of the real thing.
Yep.
So it's like, I'm tired of masturbating on this rowing machine. I want to get in water. So I took a learn to row class on the water. We have a boathouse near my house that's connected to UVA. And so now I'm out in the water. and we're barely rowing, right? Because they're teaching us how to not fall out of the boat pretty much at the beginning. But I noticed that the next day I would wake up with my 5 million meters of rowing in that machine. And we were doing sweep at first, which means you have the one oar, right? And I was like, wait a minute. I'm doing pretty much the same motion, but I'm feeling muscles I didn't know I had. And I have 5 million, folks. Think about that. I'm in really good shape for a machine, but it didn't really correlate to the water that much, where I was doing way fewer strokes in any given workout, which was mind-boggling to me. And then after 6 or 8 sessions of that, then they said, okay, we're going to put you guys in a scull, right? We're going to teach you guys how to scull. Now you have an oar in each hand, and you're doing that. All of a sudden, there were muscles in my deltoids, around my rhomboids, stuff. And by the way, I was still rowing indoors at that time to stay in shape. So this plays into what you're talking about right now, Phil. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're not doing the real thing, you will never build those muscles. And by the way, in my hips, because now you have to keep the boat from tipping over. So you're constantly your brain is keeping you straight in that boat. You can't mess around the way you can in the house. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is you're in real life. It's reality. You're in a real boat.
Yeah.
And in a machine, regardless of what kind of machine it is, they're all the same. They're going to limit your activity.
Right.
You have to do this motion. You can only do that motion. And of course, that motion is the deltoid. Well, what about those other deltoid fibers that we don't contract when we do this?
Right.
Oh, don't worry about them. It's really an artificial activity. And they spend a lot of time teaching people about positioning and technique, lifting a weight. And you want to lift a weight properly, but it's a natural thing. And everybody's different. We all have different attachments. I was amazed when I did human dissection. We knew this muscle attached here and it inserted over there. Well, wait a minute, there's all these bodies in the lab and no two bodies actually did that. They were always slightly different. So somebody's going to tell you to do this on a machine, and it isn't necessarily going to exercise all of your musculature. And that's all it is.
Yeah, and I learned the same thing when I went through gross anatomy. Origins and insertions are different on every human body. And when you change those origins and insertions by just centimeters, right? Not even, just even smaller than that, you'll see millimeters, and that's the difference between a great athlete and a non-great athlete, right? The origins and insertions are where those muscles connect to the bone.
Yeah, and exercising things efficiently, meaning completely, and not skipping muscle fibers that you can enlist because you're restricting your movement, you're narrowing your ability, your movement ability, and you're leaving them out of the workout. It's like walking. It's just like walking. People laugh when I suggest walking. I had Mark Allen walk as part of his schedule, and I would tell people to walk, and a lot of them would come. These are people who are running 80 miles a week and biking, and they call me up and say, I've been walking for a week now, and I'm really getting sore. I don't understand this. Well, you're using muscles you've never used. What a deal.
Yeah.
You're now enlisting more muscles, which means you're increasing your circulation, you're improving your immune system, you're giving your body more options when it comes to movement, and when you get into competition, that is invaluable.
I want to get into one of those type of exercises in just a second, but first I need to tell everyone to go buy Villa Capelli olive oil. Why? Because in this country, you're able to cut olive oil up to 40% with seed oils and still call it 100% pure olive oil. That's our great FDA at work. I can't fix the FDA, folks. I can't. What I can do is tell you to get a product that is not diminished by what our laws allow us to do. And that stuff comes out of Puglia, Italy. I'm talking about the purest olive oil I've ever found. I love this stuff. I knew both of the owners. One of them passed away. Paul Capelli passed away. But his husband, Stephen Crutchfield, on Paul's dying day, he said, please keep the company going. Stephen could have easily shut down Villa Capelli, got all the money, and just rode off into the sunset. That's not what he did. He took the bull by the horns, and Villa Capelli is still the great olive oil company today that they have been for a couple of decades now. Villa Capelli, you want to save 10%, put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE, and you will save 10%. If you spend more than $125 after the discount, so let me do the math, spend $140 minus 10%, you're still above $125, Stephen will ship it to you for free. Villa Capelli olive oil, promo code Vinnie. We're talking to Dr. Phil Maffetone. His book, The Math Method, it's called The Math Method, right? I got it sitting here somewhere.
I don't know. You're not required to keep track.
What's the Bible? What's the Bible one?
Written 20.
What's the Bible one that we all love? I have it in my bookshelf.
The big yellow book is the big book of endurance training and racing.
That's the one that
competitive athletes. Yeah. The companion is the big red book, which is for people who are not so much into competition. Very similar material, a little more material, but not geared toward competition.
And as Phil said, he's written more than 20 books. But those two, if you're looking to get into any kind of great shape, just go get the yellow book. I just sit there and nod the whole time I'm reading that book, and I use it. I cross-reference that book all the time. Phil, we're talking about doing functional things. One of the things I talk about all the time is cycling, because I've always been fascinated with bicycles and cycling. And at some point, this guy sent me, I want to say about 15, 20 years ago, he sent me some power cranks, the guy who invented the power cranks. Now, every cyclist thinks that I'm spinning. I'm lifting my leg up as much as I'm pushing it down, but we really don't. And the power crank actually, turns that whole thing on its own head, because there's a reverse clutch in each crank, which means you have to lift it up. And you start working muscles in your hips and in your lower abs, which we were just talking about a little while ago. And what we've learned from power cranks is you start working muscles in your hip flexors that were never trained aerobically. They're trained anaerobically if you do push-up. I mean, not push-ups, but sit-ups or leg lifts or anything. But you never get that aerobic. You never get the metal to the road. You never get that mitochondria in those muscles. And what I found is by using power cranks, it doesn't particularly make you a better cyclist, but it does make you a better walker and runner, which is odd because you're working muscles in an aerobic fashion that never get worked in that way.
Yeah, there are cross effects. That's where the name cross training comes from. We do one thing and it helps another. Everything we do in the body helps everything in the body. And the more, like we've talked about earlier, the more aerobic muscle fibers we develop and make more functional, the better we're going to be from an athletic standpoint, but also the healthier we're going to be, because these aerobic muscle fibers are health dependent. And when you build the aerobic muscles, they are the muscles that, when we have an anaerobic muscle, I don't know where the camera is, an anaerobic, set of muscle fibers, they're called white muscle fibers, and the red muscle fibers are the aerobic fibers, and they're endowed with circulation. The white fibers are not. So how does the white fiber get its circulation? The aerobic fibers are all around those anaerobic fibers. So they bring in nutrients through their circulation to help the white aerobic muscle fibers. That's how, one of the ways, an athlete can perform their best after an aerobic base building, having done no anaerobic, no intervals, no hard workouts at all. Happens all the time.
But would you agree that if you built the big base and then you did some of the anaerobic work that you're now rock solid, you've done everything you can do? Or is it even necessary?
I don't think it's necessary. I think it may help a small amount. Now, if you're an athlete and that's your whole thing, you're a competitive athlete, you're a professional. Do you want those few extra seconds in a race? You sure do. And so you would do those things, but you don't want to risk falling apart by doing them. Yeah. So for the average person, it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah, I don't think we pay enough attention. Everyone likes to overtrain, right? We always think we're being, gallant.
No pain, no gain.
Yeah, no pain, no gain. And
we're still there.
If you don't overtrain, you didn't do enough, right? And I find myself when I'm doing consults talking people out of doing more, right?
Yeah.
Saving them from themselves, because everyone goes and looks at, I guess, Instagram or TikTok or wherever people are watching, and they'll see some person on steroids doing a certain thing, and they want to get there. I want to be like that person. It's like, well, you're never going to be like that person unless you want to become a drug addict, and that person may be dead in 6 months, and you'll never know it, right?
Or they'll look at their schedule, which is mostly a lie, and they'll say, oh, I'm only doing this. I need to do that. Right. Or they'll go out for a run on Sunday morning with their buddies, and everybody talks about how many miles they've run this week. Wow, this is cool. And you're thinking, God, I better sneak in an extra 10 miles. I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. tomorrow and get a 10-mile. Come on.
Yeah.
It's less miles and it's less effort to get the best return.
And also, you build up when you're resting, not when you're working out.
Yeah. People forget the basic concepts. It's yin and yang. We work out and then we rest.
Right.
If we don't rest, the workout doesn't do anything. We actually it's a training. I call it the training model where we train and then rest. And if we train too much relative to rest, we're overtraining.
Yeah. And you won't get the benefits. So you've overworked and you won't get the benefits you were looking for. You'll have the opposite of what you wanted. So I think we've nailed that home enough. Phil, we have just a few more minutes. I have podcasts back to back today. When we said Renaissance man at the beginning of the show, you are truly a Renaissance man. Your music is out there. You've been around music for a long time. And we know that about you, or at least I know that about you. And I think the audience needs to go listen to your music. But you mentioned something off the air, and I told you, don't tell me anything more about it. I want to talk to you on the air about it. You're walking into comedy now. So are we talking improv, stand-up? What are you doing?
Stand-up, and I think it's more that I fell into it. And when I got up, I realized that this is a lot of fun. And it's not that I was never funny. I was always funny. And when I lectured, I had a long lecture career. My whole adult life, I lectured. And in my lectures, I would say funny things, and I would usually get a good laugh. Sometimes it would be too far out for people. Sometimes it would be offensive, but it was funny. And I never thought much about it. And a few months ago, I was lecturing at a fitness center here. And because of COVID, I hadn't lectured in 5 years. And I realized that, boy, I really like this lecturing. And then I thought, I like the funny stuff even more. And so I started writing out the comedy lines, the jokes. I do mostly improv, but it's funny stuff. And it's very creative. It's part of the creativity that I developed when I became a songwriter 20 years ago. That has continued to evolve, and now it's into comedy. And I have something on my website called Age and Happy Birthday, which I did as a first shot at recording a comedy. It's a short 5-minute video on age and birthdays. Why do we celebrate birthdays? I can't explain it. You really have to see it.
Right.
And I just, I can't let go of this thing. I'm writing comedy every day, and now I'm putting comedy in my articles. I have something called that I just posted called "Is Exercise Funny?" And I thought it was pretty good. And I have something called the Olympic Debacle, which I wrote as a post article on the Olympics and how the media has ruined watching the Olympics. I haven't had a TV in 40 years, so I don't watch them, but people get caught up in it and they're misled, they're miseducated, they're hyped up, and the sponsor is that evil liquid that has made the world over fat. Yeah. So there's humor in everything, and I've always said that the most important body part for athletes is the brain. And I never liked hearing that. Like, oh no, it's my muscles. Oh no, it's my adrenals. Oh no, it's my heart. It's the brain. And if you can't see the humor in everyday life, you're missing out on something very important.
It's funny. You and I ended up on a stage doing comedy, but at different times for different reasons. When I first moved to LA in 1990 or 91, I was leaving a radio show in New Orleans. So for the first time, I didn't have an audience. And I was trying to get some television shows off the ground back then. And I knew it was going to take a long time. And I felt like I needed to stay sharp. So early on when I was in LA, I went, oh, there's the Improv right there on Melrose. I'm going to just pop in on a Tuesday night. And what I learned was, it might have been Tuesday or Wednesday. I want to say it was Tuesday. I walked in just to see whoever was on stage. And it was an open mic at the Improv. And I inquired about it. I went, wait, because most of these people were not funny. They got their friends to show up because they desperately wanted to be in comedy, and this is their first shot. And so I inquired. I went, wait, can anyone go up? And they said, yeah. And they said, you have material? I said, no, but next Tuesday I will. So I went home and wrote, and they said, you get 5 minutes. We give you a light at 5. They explained to me exactly what was going to go on. So I went home and put together 5 minutes. I wrote it down. I did not commit it to memory. All I had to do was remember my bullet points because I knew my own. They're my stories, right? It's exactly what I did on the radio show. So I went up and did my 5 minutes and got a lot of laughs, which was, I didn't think I would get any, right? And after the thing, the guy Mark Lanau, who was one of the owners of the Improv, it was he and Bud Friedman. He came up to me and he goes, hey, man, how long have you been doing this? And I looked at my watch and I went, for 5 minutes. He goes, you've never been on stage before doing this? And I said, no, you're looking at it. And he said, I want you to come back and do that same 5 minutes next week. Can you come back? And I said, yeah, sure. So I came back and I did 5 minutes. Same 5 minutes. I didn't change one word. Now I was more honed, right? And I got even more laughs. So he said, I want you to come back next week and bring 7 minutes. Can you add 2 minutes to that? And I went, shouldn't be that hard. So I added 2 minutes, and things kept working out. And Mark said to me, he goes, you have something that these other guys don't have. And I said, what's that, Mark? And he goes, you have a point of view. And he said, most people think you should just walk on stage and you need to say funny things, right? But there's no point of view. The reason you're getting laughs is the audience is going for the ride with you. Do you understand that? And I said, no, I do not understand that, but now I do. Right. And
yeah, very important. I mean, for me, when I was a student way back, I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to help myself, and I wanted to help other people, share that with other people. And that's what my career has been about. And I've gone from one sport to another. I've gone through the corporate world. I've worked with the military. I've helped people in all different areas of life. And then I got into music, and my music has been therapeutic, and now I'm doing comedy, and there's a purpose to the comedy. There's a message hidden away in there. Sometimes it's not so hidden. But it's part of life. It's part of a healthy brain. And you're right. It's the value of that is lacking from what I'm seeing, and I'm very new. I'm not seeing a lot of that. I see a lot of trash talking and cursing, thinking cursing is going to get laughs.
Right.
So I'm pretty much myself. I'm not trying to be anybody else. I'm trying to be me. You can't be anybody else but yourself.
Right. And that point of view will shine through. I want to go watch some of your comedy. I want to see what you're doing because I'm sure I will agree with it. But I want to ask you, since you brought it up, you said the debacle of the Olympics. What did you mean by that? What did you see that's going on? Because I have my own thoughts about what's going on. I try to stay apolitical, but please feel free.
Yeah, I think it's what's been happening for years. And I've written about this in my books, where I talk about how people are misled into thinking that athletes do different things. They think different ways. They do. And it's just a bunch of crap. It's all a lie, and it's all entertainment. It's Hollywood. The Olympics are not Hollywood. The Olympics are about human performance at the highest level. But, if it's about human performance at the higher level, why are some of the greatest athletes not even there? And why are so many athletes injured? And why do so many die prematurely? And why do we have the worst products in the world being the sponsor of the Olympics? Yeah. And why are the commentators babbling about the stupidest things? The examples I would give in the book, or during a game, a football game on TV, the announcer will say, "Here comes Big Joe. He's tough because he plays injured."
Right.
Well, if you're a 10-year-old kid, you're thinking, I need to be injured. I need to put tape around me so that I'm looking cool and I'm tough. That's what it means. And that really does happen. No pain, no gain is not something that just comes out of the blue. It's something that begins in our youth. I don't want to always blame it on the gym teachers, but it's the TV, which is in sports, which is in entertainment. It's not talking about the quality of the impressiveness of an athletic performance. And then I enjoy watching, women in skimpy outfits, but when they complain, when consumers complain that the women's volleyball team wore long pants in the competition instead of their shorts,
right?
That kind of says it all.
Yeah, I've always found that to be, the sexualization of athletes. We see it with the ice skaters. I always make the joke that, hey, you're not going to win unless you do that lift your leg crotch shot to the judges, And
you're not going to get on prime time.
Right. And people say, oh, come on, Vinny, that's, it's like, am I making that up, that these women can't win unless they're putting their crotch in the judge's face? Did I make that up, or am I watching that in real time? You can't tell me that anything is functional about women having bathing suits in the beach volleyball that needs to be crammed up their ass. That's not functional in any way, shape, or form. I'm not a prude, by the way. I don't mind seeing it. As a matter of fact, I love seeing it. But the bottom line is it's not functional. And what are we saying to young athletes, right? And every girl track star, there's no reason you have to have basically a thong to run track. That is not functional. That's not a functional outfit. You could do it, FloJo didn't have to have a thong, Jackie Kersey never had a thong. None of these women had thongs. Now they have thongs. If it's so functional, why don't the guys have thongs? They have what looks like bike uniforms on. They got things down to their knees. So it's sexualization of the athletes. Nike knows that sells, so they're going to do what sells. So I get it. I get why they're doing it, right? But it doesn't make, it doesn't mean anything anymore. And they did a thing. You said you didn't watch the Olympics. I did. You're supposed to be for the United States or for Ukraine or for England or, whichever country you're from. But they do a thing with the track stars now. The last Olympics, even just the last Olympics, you would see these guys walking out. You would see them walking onto the track before the 800. They got their running shoes in their hand. They sit down on the track. They're putting their shoes on. They're getting ready. Their coach is working them up and the whole thing. Not anymore, Phil. At the Paris Olympics, they did what was like a rock star entrance for each person. So they had they had this thing and they had smoke, right? And they would announce each person and they would come out and they would do their little, making all kinds of signs with their hands or whatever salute they were making for whatever gender or whatever they were doing. Everyone was an individual. When did we all become individuals? You're winning. You're here for the United States. But we've turned everyone into this, you're the individual, right? It makes no sense to me.
And I can tell you from experience that these professional athletes hate when the TV does. The TV runs the show.
Right.
They say, do this, everybody does that. Athletes hate it.
Right. I know they hate it.
It's sad. It's gotten really sad. And I couldn't watch the Olympics if I wanted to because, well, I don't have a TV, but I don't have any, I wouldn't have any subscriptions for those things. I assume you needed that. I could have gone to a sports bar and probably watched the Olympics. I might have been able to see the highlights online, but it's too painful.
Yeah, it's not what it used to be. And
no.
And it's lopsided. I get it. They want to show Simone Biles because she screwed up in the last Olympics. And, we like to see a come from behind story, even though she's the greatest Olympic athlete in gymnastics of all time. She had a problem in the last Olympics. She could have probably used someone like you because she got the yips. Her brain went off, and now she came back and she's winning. But every night when I turned on the Olympics, I'm watching this little 5-foot-tall woman flip around, right? It's like, what happened to the other sports? Can we watch any other sport besides Simone Biles? I get it. She's great. She's winning again. But can we do a recap on her and then move on to something else?
Yeah.
Why do we have to watch
some real things?
Yeah, we're watching just her, right?
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood. It's all about Hollywood. And I talked about the Seine River, the danger of the Seine River, and how it's been, for 100 years, you weren't allowed to go into the river. Now, all of a sudden, it's the Olympics, and the TV says, no, we have to have it in the Seine because that's cool. And they spent $1 billion, B as in billion, to clean it up, and it didn't really clean it up. People got sick, and the Olympic Committee said, oh, no, it's got nothing to do with the water.
Yeah.
How many people could have been helped from from that $1 billion? That's what I said in the article.
Yeah, none of it makes sense. And the Olympics, they seem to get pretty woke this time around. And I didn't really understand what that was all about. I didn't understand why that had to overtake the Olympics, right? But they did this whole woke thing. I might lose people by saying this, but there were 2 people where their chromosomes showed that they were actual men who were in the boxing arena beating up on women. That is not right, in my opinion. My opinion can be wrong. And the Olympic Committee could have taken a stance on this, but they went, well, their passport said that they were women. Yes, but that they're not because you've seen the chromosome test. They're not women.
Yeah, I touched on that. I mean, I touched on a number of these controversies that were just stupid, and they made them into another entertainment thing.
Yeah. So look, love me or hate me for saying that. That's the most political thing I've ever said on this podcast. I said at the end of a show with Phil Maffetone, but it's the truth. When you're going to let men go in, if a man hits a woman and it's not the Olympic stage, he's in trouble. He goes to jail. The Olympics just went, okay, that's fine. A man can hit a woman. All right, well, I guess we're there.
Yeah, there's some very serious social misrepresentations and it's been building up for years. So it's not new, but it gets worse and worse by every Olympics, every 2 years, really, because the Winter Olympics not as popular, but it occurs there as well.
Yeah. Well, before you and I go off into political hell, folks, go find Phil. Tell them where they can find your music and everything about you.
All of my latest existence is on maffetonemusic.com. My new articles, my funny things. I call it true comedy because I'm telling the truth. And of course, my music. I have a new album coming out in a couple of weeks called Beware Mediocrity. Speaking of social things, I love the album. I'm not just saying that. It may be the best album I've made, but it's it's another step. It's album number 9.
Wow.
Number 9.
Number 9. Play it backwards.
And I can't stop making music. It just keeps coming out. Well, I'm lucky.
Keep doing it, Phil, because you are good at what you do. Now I'm looking up something. But let's see. Let me see if I can find this. Maybe it's here. Okay. Maybe we can find it right here. Okay. So I have it. Folks, you know what to do with me. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, please go to VinnyTortorich.com. Click through the banner. It makes a big difference. It's how we keep this podcast free for all of these years in a row, and we can bring on people like Dr. Phil Maffetone. So, on behalf of Phil Maffetone, my name is Vinny Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with the Beatles.
Yes, cheap bitch. Number 9, 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 number 9. Number 9, number 9, number 9.
Thank you for listening to Fitness Confidential. Get more information at VinnyTortorich.com. Remember to rate and review us on iTunes. And follow Vinny on Instagram and Twitter.